Who was Hayden Panettiere? Heroes and Nashville star explained. Warning, content warning. This video discusses Hayden Panettiere's death, personal struggles, and difficult periods in her life and career. Please watch with care. Hayden Panettiere became famous before most people even knew her name. She was a child actor, a teenage television star, a singer, and eventually one of the most recognizable young actresses of the 2000s. For millions of viewers, she was Claire Bennet from Heroes, the seemingly ordinary cheerleader who discovers she has extraordinary healing powers. For others, she was Juliette Barnes from Nashville, the ambitious country singer whose career and personal life became the emotional center of the series. But Hayden's real life was far more complicated than either of those characters. And today, her career is being remembered for both the enormous success she achieved at a young age and the difficult personal struggles she faced later. Hayden Leslie Panettiere was born on August 21, 1989, in Palisades, New York. Her career began incredibly early. She started baby modeling when she was only 8 months old and appeared in her first commercial at 11 months. As a child, she continued working steadily, appearing in television commercials and eventually landing roles on daytime soap operas, including One Life to Live and Guiding Light. She also began building a film career. She voiced Dot in Pixar's A Bug's Life, appeared in Remember the Titans, and took roles in movies including Raising Helen, Ice Princess, and Bring It On, All or Nothing. But her life changed dramatically in 2006. At just 17 years old, Hayden was cast as Claire Bennet in NBC's superhero drama Heroes. The premise was simple but powerful. Ordinary people around the world discover they have extraordinary abilities. Hayden's Claire was a high school cheerleader with a seemingly impossible power. She could heal herself from almost any injury. The character became one of the show's most recognizable faces, and Hayden became a major teenage star. The phrase associated with Claire became one of the show's most memorable lines: "Save the cheerleader, save the world." Heroes became a major television phenomenon during its first season, and Hayden received several Teen Choice Awards for the role. Suddenly, the teenager who had been working since infancy was an international celebrity. But Hayden wasn't only acting. She was also developing a career in music. Her singing became particularly important later when she joined another television series that would define the next stage of her career. That show was Nashville. In 2012, Hayden was cast as Juliette Barnes on ABC's Nashville. Juliette was almost the opposite of Claire Bennet. She was a talented young country singer who was ambitious, confident, complicated, and frequently self-destructive. And Hayden didn't simply play a singer. She actually performed many of Juliette's songs. That allowed the show to use Hayden's real vocal ability as an important part of the character. Nashville became a major chapter in her career. Hayden received 2 Golden Globe nominations for her performance as Juliette Barnes, and the character became one of the show's central figures throughout its 6-season run. But while Hayden was portraying a character whose life was constantly falling apart and rebuilding itself, her own life was becoming increasingly difficult. She became a mother in 2014 when her daughter Kaya was born. Around that period, Hayden experienced severe postpartum depression and struggled with alcohol and prescription medication. She later spoke publicly about those experiences, including entering treatment and dealing with addiction. Her personal life also received enormous media attention because of her relationship with Ukrainian heavyweight boxer Vladimir Klitschko, Kaya's father. Eventually, Hayden stepped away from the spotlight for several years. She returned to acting in 2023 in Scream 6, reprising her role as Kirby Reed from Scream 4. For longtime fans, seeing Kirby return was a major moment. It showed that Hayden was still interested in acting after years away. She subsequently appeared in projects including Amber Alert, A Breed Apart, and the 2026 psychological thriller Sleepwalker, which was her final known film role. Earlier in 2026, Hayden also published her memoir, This Is Me, A Reckoning. The book gave her an opportunity to tell her story in her own words. She discussed growing up in Hollywood, the pressures of becoming famous as a child, addiction, postpartum depression, relationships, motherhood, and painful experiences from her years in the entertainment industry. In interviews promoting the memoir, Hayden spoke about how difficult it had been to grow up while constantly being watched. She described feeling as though she had been forced to live between two worlds. One was the adult world of Hollywood, the other was the normal childhood she wanted but never really had. That perspective adds another layer to her career. When audiences watched Claire Bennet on Heroes, they saw a teenage girl discovering she was different. When they watched Juliette Barnes on Nashville, they saw a young woman trying to control her career and her life. But Hayden was experiencing the pressure of fame herself. She was working from childhood, becoming famous as a teenager, and dealing with adult expectations long before most people her age had to face them. And then, on August 16, 2026, devastating news emerged. Hayden Panettiere died at the age of 36. Her family confirmed her death through her publicist. Authorities have not publicly disclosed a cause of death, and the circumstances remain under investigation. That means speculation about how she died should not be treated as fact. What is known is that Hayden's life ended far too early. So when we ask, who was Hayden Panettiere, the answer is much bigger than two television characters. She was a performer who started working before she could even understand what fame meant. She became Claire Bennet, one of the defining characters of the superhero television boom. She became Juliette Barnes, a fictional country star whose music became an important part of Nashville. She appeared in films including Remember the Titans, Scream 4, Scream 6, and A Bug's Life. She was also a singer, producer, author, and mother. But perhaps the most important part of her legacy is that she eventually began telling her own story. For years, Hayden's personal struggles were discussed through tabloids and headlines. Her memoir allowed her to speak for herself. She talked about addiction and depression, she talked about motherhood, she talked about growing up famous, and she talked about experiences that had shaped her long before the public understood what she was going through. Her story wasn't perfect. It wasn't supposed to be, and that's what made her final chapter so human. Hayden had setbacks. She stepped away from Hollywood. Then she came back. She returned as Kirby in Scream 6. She took on new projects. She executive produced Sleepwalker. And she released a memoir that allowed her to reclaim parts of her story. Her death at 36 means there will never be another chapter in that journey. But the work she left behind remains. For fans of Heroes, she will always be Claire Bennet, the cheerleader who could heal from almost anything. For Nashville fans, she will always be Juliette Barnes, the talented and troubled singer who fought for success while constantly battling her own demons. And for people who followed Hayden's real life, she may be remembered as someone who spent years trying to find her way back to herself after growing up in an industry that demanded so much from her. Her family has asked for privacy following her death. She is survived by her daughter, Kaya. Hayden's younger brother, actor Jansen Panettiere, died in 2023. The two losses are another painful part of the family's story. Hayden Panettiere's career lasted more than 3 decades. She began as a baby model. She became a child actor. She became a teenage television star. She became a Golden Globe-nominated actress. She became a singer. She became a mother. She disappeared from the spotlight for a time, and then she returned to tell her story on her own terms. Her life cannot be reduced to her struggles, and it cannot be reduced to the characters she played. But those characters will remain a major part of her legacy. Claire Bennet represented the idea that even when you are hurt, you can heal. Juliette Barnes represented someone constantly fighting to rebuild herself after making mistakes. And, in a strange way, both characters became connected to the journey Hayden herself experienced. She spent her life in front of cameras. She experienced extraordinary success. She faced painful setbacks, and she kept trying to move forward. Hayden Panettiere was only 36 when she died, but she had already left behind performances that millions of people remember. A cheerleader who could heal, a country singer who refused to disappear, and a woman who eventually found the courage to tell the world her own story. That is who Hayden Panettiere was, and that is how she deserves to be remembered.